David Schmus with Christian Educators here. As educators in our schools, our days are typically filled with teaching academic content. We want our students to master our subject, or if you teach the primary grades, all the subjects, right? But as Christian educators, we of course want to make a difference beyond that. We want to impact these students for eternity. But how exactly does that happen? The Lord recently taught me a lesson about this through the story of Gideon in the Bible. In Judges chapter 6, we learn that ancient Israel is being oppressed by a foreign invader, and the angel of the Lord approaches Gideon to call him to be the leader that will deliver them from their oppressors. But there's a problem. Gideon has an identity issue. Not only is Gideon fearfully hiding in a pit while threshing his wheat, not exactly a moment of courage, but when God calls him, he responds that his clan is the weakest in his tribe and that he is the least of his entire family. In other words, Gideon is saying, "You've got the wrong guy, Lord. I am weak. I am not enough. I am afraid." Based on that, you might think the Lord would move on to someone else. But the Lord sees something in Gideon that Gideon can't see in himself. The angel of the Lord actually calls him a mighty warrior. And if you read the rest of the story, you see that Gideon becomes that mighty warrior. God saw the latent potential in Gideon and called it out. God knew that his presence and empowering would actually turn Gideon into a mighty warrior, if Gideon would only say yes. Guess what? In a very real way, we can partner with God to do this with our students. When I was a little fifth grader, this happened to me. I had never considered myself a very good student up until then. In fact, I had evidence to suggest that the opposite was true. But one day my teacher, Mr. Bilodeau, called me out publicly in front of class as being one of the top students. I was shocked by that. My identity switched that day, and I saw myself differently, and I began to walk more and more in that identity. I became a high-achieving student. I'll bet that many of you have similar stories about how the words of a teacher changed your view of yourself and likely altered the story of your life. I'm willing to bet that you do the same thing for your students. You notice where they excel and you call it out. You begin to see the gifts they have to offer the rest of the class and speak it over them to become a blessing to the world. You honor their artistry, their brilliant mind for math, their elegant writing or passionate speaking, their ability to organize or to encourage and include their classmates, their leadership, their athletic ability, or their musical talent. As you call these things out in them, in a small way, you are doing for them what the Lord did for Gideon that day when he was threshing wheat in a hole in the ground. Keep doing it. Pray that God would show you what gifts he has placed in them, and as you let God use you to help steer them toward their God-given destiny, he will use you to draw them closer to him. One last thing. As you do this for your students, God is speaking over you as well. He is watching you love on his precious ones and saying, "Yes, that is what I designed her to do. She is my mighty warrior in that classroom, contending for my purposes in the hearts and lives of these children that I love." So as you call out the gifts God has planted in your students and help shape their God-given identity, like Gideon, you also become that mighty warrior standing in the gap for your students that he has called you to be. Thank you for your faithfulness in our schools, and may God bless you today.